A couple of days ago, I got a message from a friend of mine telling me that she's considering quitting her PhD. And because I have finished my own PhD, I totally understand what she's going through. And her message was not the only message that I got. I got messages from other people and also a lot of comments from people that I don't even know, just telling me how challenging the whole process is for them. I was just thinking to myself, now that I've finished my PhD, what are the things that if someone had told me or if I had just known about them before I started the PhD, maybe, just maybe, it would have helped to make the process a little bit less challenging for me. That's what I'm going to be sharing with you guys in this video. Hey friends! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Jane. I recently got my PhD in chemical engineering from a university in New York, United States. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys 10 things that I wish someone told me before I started my PhD. Before I started my PhD, all I was thinking about was the research. I know that PhD is an advanced study where you go to do research. At the end of it, you become a doctor. I knew the kind of research that I wanted to do before I started my PhD. So that's all I was thinking about. So even though I had senior friends that already were doing their PhD before I started, when we discussed or when I asked questions, I mostly just talked about how to get in, how to apply for admission, how to get scholarship and things like that. No one really told me that there are different layers. There are layers to this PhD that if you know them, then maybe yours will not be that challenging. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you guys in this video. First thing I wish someone told me before I started my PhD is that the advisor that you work with is going to be the most important factor in your PhD. If you're not familiar with the PhD process, how it works is that as a PhD student, you're going to be doing research to answer one question or the other. If in the science field, you're going to be doing research to answer one scientific question or to solve one problem or to develop something. And for you to do that, you cannot just work alone. So you would have to work with an advisor. Is a professor. And here in the US, how it works is that your professor, that's your advisor, is going to be the one that will pay you your stipend throughout the duration of your PhD. No one told me how important an advisor is, that the advisor you work with is the one that is going to determine how your PhD is going to go. Advisor is going to be the one that will determine when you will graduate. Yes, there's nothing like a PhD is 4 years or it's 5 years or it's 6 years. It is when your advisor say you are ready to go, that's when you will go. For instance, for me now, since I'm now a doctor, if you go through my portfolio, they will always trace it back to my advisor. So I am a product of my advisor. So if your advisor thinks you are not ready to go out there and represent him and the scientific community as a doctor, he or she is not going to let you go. And also, if you happen to work with an advisor who is just not a nice person, you would have the worst time ever. You will have the most traumatic time ever. We've had cases where people quit their PhD because of their experience with the advisor. I have seen a case where someone committed because of their advisor. If you have the best groundbreaking problem that you want to solve with your PhD, if you get so much grant and have so much money to do the research, if the person that is your advisor is not a nice person, it's going to be hell for you. It's going to be hell for you. So I have had discussions with a lot of people, and I know and I've seen what people have gone through in the hands of advisor. Even me, I went through that in my first year before I changed and got another advisor who happened to just be the best, and that was where I completed my PhD. Another thing I wish I knew before I started is that I wish I knew how important attending conferences was. So when I was doing my PhD, I was so engrossed in the research that I was doing and how challenging it was that I wasn't really thinking about the benefits of attending conferences. But luckily for me, I was in a lab where my advisor made it compulsory that you must attend at least one conference every year. I remember the first time I had to present in a conference, like give an oral presentation where people would be seated in a big hall watching you. It was during COVID. Because of that, I had to do it virtually. Then the second time was after COVID. That was the first time I would go in person to give a presentation. And mind you, before going there, the research project that I was doing was so difficult. It was so challenging. I remember a lab mate of mine telling me that my project was the most difficult one. Yeah, it just happened to be like that. And mind you, I didn't decide the project to work on. It was what my advisor gave me. That's what I was working on. Before attending that conference, I was struggling so much with my research. I was having the worst time of my life. That's when I was having the insomnia. I just had so many challenges going on with that research. It was just so difficult. But what happened? I went to the conference. This conference was a conference organized in New York City, but people from all over the United States and also from outside the US attend the conference. So imagine me, who was struggling so much with my PhD project, going to give a presentation. It was in a ballroom. Guys, it was in a ballroom, which means there were a lot of people. If you follow my Instagram, you probably saw when I posted a couple of years ago. When I got to give that presentation, I remember my senior colleagues were encouraging me, Jane, don't worry, you will do well. The slides look good, just go and give the presentation. I needed all the encouragements that I could get. And then I practiced and practiced and practiced. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go do it. So I remember that day, when it was my time to give the presentation, I got up there, and before you know it, there was a technical issue. I use a MacBook, and for some reason they didn't have MacBook connection for the projector. So for the next 5 minutes, we were trying to figure out a way to get me to project my slides. So at the end of the day, I think I had to email my slides to them and then use their computer to project. Finally, everything was fine, and mind you, I was panicking. My heart was beating. Like when you will feel like somebody can hear your chest. My heart was beating because that was going to be my first time to stand in a crowd. I mean, I give presentations back in my school just to my lab mates and my professor, but never really to a large room of people from all over the world. So finally, I started giving the presentation. I just started talking and talking and talking. And after the presentation, which lasted for about 17 minutes, there was no extra time for them to ask me questions because we already used about 5 minutes to try to solve the technical issue. And also before my turn, the guy that presented before me was a stammerer, so he took some of my time also. So because of that, the person in charge of it now said, because we are trying to keep to time, we'll not be able to take some questions for Jane. However, if you have questions for her, just meet her after the session and ask her question. Because of that, I didn't get to stand and answer questions to people. But what happened, guys? What happened after that was what changed the course of my entire PhD experience. What happened was that immediately I left the stage and I went to my seat. This old professor was sitting close to me. The seat between us was empty, so he just like moved over next to me and started asking me questions about my presentation. I answered him and he was fine. Then after the section, immediately I walked out. Guys, I am not kidding. People were standing outside, lining up to ask me questions. I remember one friend of mine in Nigeria that was also there. When I finished, he was like, Jane, you come here, come do paparazzi. So people were asking me a lot of questions. I had someone from an industry. I had a fellow student. I had someone that was a postdoc, which means they've already finished their PhD. I had 2 people connect with me, give me their card, connect with me on LinkedIn. They were just asking me questions. They were like, one of them told me that my presentation was the best he has seen so far in the conference. My mind went, remember, I was struggling with my research, and it was that same research that I've not completed that I came to present in this big auditorium, and all of those people came to me just praising my presentation and not just the presentation, praising my research. Now, what this did to me was that experience opened up my mind and made me realize, oh, I'm actually not doing anything wrong. The fact that this research is challenging is how it's supposed to be. I mean, it's research. I'm trying to discover something somebody has never done. So it's not supposed to be easy, because if it is easy, we'll be discovering new things every day. So I'm actually on the right track. So I went back to school after that conference. I don't know how to explain how I felt. And after that, the next year, I attended so many conferences. The next year, I went to a whole different conference, and by that time, I had already completed that project and published it. So when I was giving the presentation, I did not know that the pioneer of the field in which that project was in the hall. Like, he was there listening to me. Imagine you are trying to discuss something you did about airport, and the main person that discovered airport is there. That means they know even more than what you are presenting. I think he was there, and I didn't know. I just gave my presentation, and by the time I finished, I got a lot of questions. And after that presentation, it was lunchtime. We went to eat. It was a buffet kind of setting. As I was just dishing my food, I wasn't looking at the person next to me. Like, I knew there was a man also dishing food, but I didn't look at his face. The next thing, he turned and he said to me, "That was a really nice presentation. You guys are doing a great job." I turned and I went, "What? It is this man, the man that I reference his work, the man that I read his work every time." Like, for me to start up that project, I had to read his. I was like, what? Immediately, I pick up my phone, I text my advisor, guess who just complimented my presentation? So, but point is, I wish someone had told me how important it is to attend conferences, because as a PhD student, when you attend conference, you're not only going to share your research, you're going to get feedback from people. You're going to have the opportunity to discuss with people of like minds, who are not the same people you see in your lab, who are not your advisor, who are not your lab mate. You're going to be able to discuss with other people, and also you'll be able to meet other students and make friends. And by discussing with them, you just realize, oh, this challenge that I'm facing is not common to me. We are all going through it. You know, the problem becomes a little bit easier when you know that everybody is facing the problem, that it's not just you. You are not the problem. The next thing I wish I knew before I started my PhD is how important networking is. It is very important that you make friends, or you get acquainted with people who are also doing what you're doing, or pursuing what you're pursuing. It might be people who are also doing a PhD, or people who are doing the kind of research you're doing, or people who you guys have something in common. Because when you connect with people, these people, they will come handy in so many ways. I can tell you guys that most of the things I've been able to achieve, or I was able to achieve during my PhD, came from the people that I knew, came from the connections that I made. Like I said, during that conference, I met some people. I know some of those people that eventually, during the course of my PhD, when I needed like a reference letter, or just someone to show that I am who I say I am, I go to these people to get reference letters. And when I have scientific questions, or when I have just professional questions, because I have a lot of friends who were also doing their own PhD, it was easier to talk to them. And not just doing their PhD, I also had friends who were doing the kind of research that I was doing, and they were not in my school. So it's always good to have a perspective from somebody else. So I could always just hit them up, and we will discuss about the problem. And same goes to them too. If they have any issue, they can always come to me and we will discuss. So it's just very important you network and you make friends with people. Because if you don't do that, what will happen is that you will get isolated, and all you will know is that my research. Every time your head is bent down on what you're doing, or facing your computer, or you're in the lab just doing that, you'll be missing out on so many informations and so many things that you could actually gain if you network and make friends. I wish someone had told me how important it is to apply for and to get fellowships. So when I started my PhD, because of how challenging my research was, all I was doing in the beginning was just research. Remember, I said I wasn't even going for conferences until later on. Along the line, I was like, you know what? I'm just focusing on research. Let me apply for fellowships. I started applying. I applied for travel grants, and I got them. I know I got I think 2 travel grants. I don't remember. By travel grants, I mean they will give you money that you use to sponsor yourself to travel to conferences and present your research. I got a fellowship that helped to increase my stipend. So if I was getting $100 before, maybe with the fellowship, I started getting $110 or $105. So there are so many fellowships that you could get. So don't just isolate yourself and be focusing only on research. I wish someone had told me. If I had known from the very beginning, I would have been applying for fellowships, and who knows how many I would have gotten. Before I started my PhD, I wish I knew that research is not easy. I wish I knew that research is not that easy. So because I was always an A student, I was always used to doing well in my classes, I thought research was going to be that way for me too. But I wish someone had told me that research is not going to be easy, and that sometimes your advisor will be as clueless as you are about the problem you're having. Remember, you're trying to do something no one has ever done. People might have done something related, but not exactly what you're doing. So you might get to some point where you don't know what the question is. Research is not like classwork where whatever, if you want to solve a problem, you can go read on how to solve it or read something. For research, it's just completely new, and sometimes your advisor and people around you will just be as clueless as you are. So I just wish someone had told me, because I got to learn that at some point in my PhD. At the beginning, I would struggle. I thought I was the problem. I thought I was not smart enough. I thought there was something wrong with me. But when I started talking with people and started getting, the further I went to the PhD, I realized that, oh, okay, I'm not the problem. We are all facing this thing. Everybody's having challenges. This is how it is. That's why it is research. Before I started my PhD, I wish I knew that self-motivation is one of the best armor you will need to fight through the process, to fight through the war of getting a PhD. By self-motivation, what I mean is that as a PhD student, you will be doing research that most times, if not all the time, people around you don't know what you're talking about. Your parents will not understand your research. Your partner will not understand your research. And if care is not taken, if your friends are not in your field, they may not also understand your research. So you will they won't really be able to understand your pain, and if care is not taken, you will quit because of how hard it will get. So what will see you through is just you motivating yourself. Because when you come to your mom or you come to your sister and you're complaining, they will not just understand. Maybe because all they know is they went to school, they wrote exam. Is it not to read book and pass exam? That kind of, they don't really understand that PhD research is a whole different dynamic. So what you would need, the best thing you can do is just to self-motivate. I used to do that a lot during my PhD. I would write things on sticky notes and paste it in front of my computer just to motivate myself. I would wake up, I would pray as a Christian and just speak to myself and tell myself, Jane, you got this, you can do this, you are this. I would look into the mirror and speak to myself. Of course, that didn't work all the times. There were still times when I would call my sister. I'll be like crying, I don't know what to do. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Like, what am I supposed to do? I remember nobody sent me. I'm the one that sent myself. I'm the one that woke up and said I wanted to do a PhD. So nobody can help me. I'm the one that will help myself. So yeah, self-motivation is very important. So if as a PhD student, you're going through things, just motivate yourself. Tell yourself, I got this. I can do this. If for nothing else, tell yourself, Jane did this and became Dr. Jane. Me too, I will do it and I'll become a doctor. Just keep on motivating yourself and it will come to an end. Before I started my PhD, I wish I knew how important mentorship is. By mentorship, I'm not just talking about you having a mentor, because a lot of people tend to do that. They have mentors, but you also being a mentor to people. This is really important because if you have people you are mentoring, they will help you, especially in my case, they will help you know the fundamentals of things. Because what happens is, as a PhD student, most times you will get engrossed in the particular problems you're trying to solve or the things you're trying to do. You might begin to forget some things. Maybe some things you knew at the beginning. But if you have a mentee that you're mentoring, by the time they ask you a question, something you did 1 year or 2 years ago, now you have to brush up your memory, and the more you answer their questions, the more you're like refreshing your memory, and just maybe what they will ask you will be something that eventually help you do what you're currently doing. My own case, I was just lucky that my advisor always made us as PhD students to have at least one mentee every semester. And the mentee was usually an undergraduate student who would do undergraduate research in our lab. So I really did enjoy having this mentee. Sometimes they will ask you questions, things that you think they're like little things, you shouldn't care so much about them. They would be like, oh, why is this way? Oh, Jane, why is this that? Oh my God. I really enjoyed that. Specifically, I enjoyed the excitement that they have when they just start in research, because most of them as undergraduate students, them being in the lab was the first time ever in their life that they have been in a science lab. So you would see the excitement, the enthusiasm, especially when they just start. So I just enjoyed seeing that. The whole process, it helped me. I really enjoyed mentoring them. And also, if you have the opportunity to be mentored by senior people, please get a mentor. I didn't really have people that would be like, this is my mentor when I was doing my PhD. I said my advisor, but I had friends who were also doing PhDs, and that also helped. And this brings me to my next point. I wish I knew how important it is to have friends who are also doing PhD. So there was this point in my PhD, the first year of my PhD, I was going through a very traumatic experience. One of the things that really helped me during that process was when I started talking to a friend that was also doing PhD, and I realized that he just went through the problem, the traumatic experience that I was going through, and he came out of it. And me knowing that, oh, you had the same issue. Then from talking to him, talking to that people, and I realized, oh, they're like, oh, this one too. I was like, okay, so this is what happens. So just having friends who were doing PhD with me was really helpful. They're just like the best people they can talk to. Let's say you're someone who is married or in a relationship and your partner is not doing a PhD. Sometimes they would not understand the gravity of what you're saying. But just having friends who are in the same field, don't try to be an island. Don't even try as a PhD student. Don't try. So having friends who are doing the same thing that you're doing is very important, because those are the friends that can understand you. I wish I knew that the number of courses you take is important, and when you take those courses is also very important. So when I started my PhD the first semester, I took 4 classes. And because I was just coming from Nigeria, where we take 9, 10, 7, 8, 11 classes in a semester, I didn't know that taking 4 classes was a lot in the US. And this is because for each of these courses you take, you'll be given homework every week. And this homework are not small thing. You have to, for me that is doing engineering, you have to solve so many problems, which means for every day of the week, you are studying, you are doing homework, you are attending classes, you're submitting homework, and then you write exam 2 or 3 times in the semester for each of these classes. Then you will do project again for these classes. For one class, you will do homework every week. You attend classes, you attend recitation, you will write 2 or 3 exams throughout that semester. You will do projects, you will write a report on the project you did, and you will give presentation on that project towards the end of the semester. Look at all the things you have to do for one class. So having to take 4 classes and do all of this in for 4 classes, I almost went mad in my first semester. I almost went mad, but in God we trust. I scaled through. I actually got all A's that semester, but I was literally a zombie. I remember my first semester, I would leave my apartment before 8, so I'll get to school by 8 a.m. and by the time I'm coming back is midnight. And when I'm coming back, I'm walking like a zombie. Like, you know, when you are walking but you are asleep, like you are asleep but you are still walking to go home and go and sleep. And that was my life from Monday till Saturday. And then only on Sunday morning, I'll go to church, come back and still continue. So I was walking like a zombie. But if someone had told me that I didn't really need to take all those classes at once, I would have spaced my classes. Because what happened was that in my second year, when I started doing research, I took only 1 class per semester. And it made life much easier. So I could just take only 1 class a semester. I could have just spaced out my classes and not have to do so much in one semester. I guess that would have helped to make it a little bit challenging, because it's not a marathon. Nobody's going to reward you for taking all your classes at once, unless your department says it is mandatory that you take all these classes at once. But usually it's unlikely, except for the first semester when you've not started doing research. Lastly, I wish someone told me that PhD is not like undergraduate or master's degree. When I was coming from PhD, I just knew I was going to go do research as a PhD student. I was going to take classes, pass my exams, and do research. Mind you, I've done research before. When I was an undergraduate, I did internship in a research institute. So I did research. I'm used to being in the lab, doing experiments and all of that. I even had a paper publication before I started my PhD. So I was used to being in the lab. I didn't know it was a whole different ball game for a PhD. I wish I had known what to expect, that it's not going to be like master's or undergraduate, because it's not a fixed time. It's not fixed that this is the number of years you're going to finish in. It's not fixed that this is how it's going to be. Just pass exam and you get your distinction or whatever and leave. I just wish somebody told me that PhD is not just about doing research and taking classes. There's just so many things involved. You have to go for conferences, you have to write abstracts and submit, you have to write papers, not one, not two, depending on how many your advisor wants. You have to write papers, you have to apply for grants and fellowship. I just wish somebody told me all of these things. Maybe, just maybe, the whole process would have been a little bit less challenging. But mind you, I do not and will never regret getting a PhD, because getting a PhD is one of the best decisions I ever made after the salvation of my soul, which is after deciding to accept Jesus as my Lord and personal Savior, because it just has changed who I am. In my previous video, we discussed about how getting a PhD changed my life, and I told you guys how it possibly damaged my life, but there are so many good aspects of me getting a PhD. I might be sharing that in my next video. So thank you so much, friends, for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.